I decided to do a walk through San Francisco while Salesforce's conference, Dreamforce, is going on. It would otherwise just be a random Tuesday, but they're in town, so they've made an extra effort to make the city nice and clean. Market Street has been under construction a lot over the past couple of years, but this is pretty unusual to have this entire area fenced off. This is normally the open air drug market in San Francisco, with hundreds of people hanging out, dealing and doing drugs in this area. We still have quite a bit of activity with tourists coming through. People pack their bags and come to the city just to do drugs because they're so readily available, they're very cheap, and there are no consequences. So we're in the United Nations Plaza, and the largest open-air drug market in the city is between the United Nations Plaza and the Federal Building. Here you see Salesforce employees just making sure things are up to par. And now we're moving along Market. Normally this area is filled with people, with more elements of the open-air drug market and dealing in stolen goods. The city is really dirty. It's not cleaned very regularly, or if it is, it just gets dirty right away. But this is what tourists see when they come through San Francisco. And then you have luxury living butting up right against where people are camped out on the sidewalks, sometimes all day, because they've been up doing drugs and they need sleep, which is another major problem for people who are without homes. The addiction, sleep deprivation, all of the challenges of life, it all adds up. And if you try to speak to some of these people and offer them help, they always have some reason why it's not a good time, or they're not interested in treatment. If they go into a shelter, they don't stay long because you can't do any drugs in the shelters, so they end up right back out on the sidewalk. And it's really difficult to see people living this way. San Francisco didn't used to be this bad. It's always had a little bit of a rough element, but I think every city has. It's just reached new levels. These are some of the Asian women that will normally sell their goods over in the UN Plaza, but it looks like they've been displaced off to Mission Street. We're at Mission and 6th here, or 7th, I think 7th. This is the Federal Building. To the right, this is Nancy Pelosi's office. It's been fenced off because I guess the federal employees didn't feel safe. We're continuing along Mission Street. This is in between 7th and 8th, or 8th and 9th. You can see tourists and workers coming and going, just stepping over all of the filth that's been created from these harm reduction policies. Every supervisor on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors is an advocate of harm reduction, but I think we're seeing the results of their policies. This is no way for human beings to live. There's no quality of life here. I'm sure we can do better than this. But we seem to keep throwing millions and millions of dollars at the problem and the problem continues to get worse. So I don't think it's a money issue. It's not even a resources issue. It's a priorities issue, and it's a policy issue. We need treatment options. We either need to help these folks get connected to treatment or get reconnected to family who can help them. But giving them all of the paraphernalia they need to do drugs on the street is really not helping. Nine times out of 10, when you engage with anybody on the street, they're very kind for the most part. They don't mean harm, generally. But they also don't want to be put into a shelter where they can't have access to drugs. So it really is an addiction issue. It's not a housing issue. You can't create enough housing to solve this problem, because if you put these folks into housing, they'll continue their addiction in those places that they get placed. So we have to find a compassionate way to solve the problem. And I think we need to start by rooting out corruption and graft, and make sure every nonprofit who's providing services in San Francisco opens up their books. We want to know where the money's being spent, who's getting paid how much is the administrative staff taking home, and what percentage of the nonprofits is going to staff versus to services. Now we're up by X headquarters. We're in between a food market and a grocery market and the X headquarters that used to be hopping, but now it's closing early and it's no longer open on the weekends. So you have all of the filth that we just saw butting right up against these beautiful gilded offices. And now we're on Fell Street. We're close to SF Jazz, which is celebrating its 40th year. I think they completed the building in 2013, and they serve about 250,000 guests every year. So this is prime real estate if you think of it in terms of SF Jazz and tourists coming to see fantastic musical performances by great jazz artists. This is what they get to walk by and step over to get to their show. And I think we have to love people enough to care enough to solve this problem once and for all. I don't think the way we're doing it now works, so please contact your local leaders and let them know your thoughts on harm reduction. I think they're nice words, but they're not doing anybody any favors. Thank you.